Excellent. We're live. Hello. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to all the silent people, and welcome to all the people who will be joining the chat tonight. Thank you very much for being here. So, as you've seen from the title, we're going to carry on with the Suit of Wands tonight. And last week, we kind of went through different themes and energies of the wands, and I talked about Ace through 7, I believe. So I'm going to do a bit of a recap. But before we get to that, there's a couple of things I wanted to share with you. As I was chatting with different people during this week, and Kickstarter, of course, is always kind of in the discussion in various Facebook groups. So I wanted to let you know that I did decide to back the Journey of the Sacred Bee. And that feels kind of special to announce that here, because when I think of the bee, I think of the energy of fire. For some reason, the bee feels to me very warm. And in a reading I had with a very, very special reader who reads, she channels energy primarily through Metatron. And she does not past life readings so much as to karmic path readings. And she takes you back to the most recent lifetime where the current pattern that you are working through kind of presented itself. And she goes deep into that story. And anyway, short version of the story is another message she received during that reading. Actually, it was a subsequent one, same reader, was that at some point in this lifetime, I would definitely be working with bees in a more tangible kind of way. So I thought it was kind of special that I ordered that deck. And I also, yes, I ordered another one as well too. And I'm drawing a blank right now. Oh, no, it's here. I'm sure I wrote this down. Okay, so I have shared on a few different occasions in different videos the beautiful Rebellion Tarot by Robin Cole. And so, of course, I am on her mailing list, and I received the notifications quite a few times for her new deck, which is called Emerging from Darkness. It is a completely different look from the beautiful Rebellion, and if you haven't had a glance at it, please go ahead and look at it on Kickstarter. Emerging from Darkness. When I decided to back it this morning, it was 78% funded, so it's almost funded. 17 more days in the campaign. But I feel this is going to be an amazing deck. She is marketing it as a shadow deck, but I see many more other possibilities with this deck. And so I am really looking forward to that. I did send her a message about, hi Jen, I sent her a message regarding Beautiful Rebellion, because I know a lot of people, when I show it, ask, oh, well, that's too bad, it's out of print, and nobody likes to see an out of print deck in a video. So I will let you know if I hear back from her, if she has some news about the reprint of that deck. So anyway, so those are two decks that I'll be getting in 2020, hopefully. And, oh yes, I had quite a long comment on one of my videos regarding my, I suppose it was a little, backhanded comment about a particular card in the Slow Tarot. And it's not something that I regret saying. It's something that I would like to expand upon. And I have planned to do a video just on the Slow Tarot as I spend more time with it. But that particular comment has kind of stirred me on to get that video going. And also, because this is a devil year for me, I really want to kind of expand and bring into that video the energy of as many different devil cards as I can, especially the ones that really get people's, that get people going. So if you have a deck that has really good devil cards that I might not be aware of, that I might not have in my collection, can you let me know in the comments? And I would really appreciate you sharing that with me. All right, so I think we're good to go. So tonight we're going to carry on with 8 through King. And one more thing. So I want to go back to the 7s. because I had one particular deck. A question arose from a viewer, and I think it's a really good question. And it's about this card here. This is from the Numinous. And the comment went something like this: well, I just don't get this card. And let me pull a 7 from another deck. So here's the Anna K. I pulled this out for tonight. And we talked a little bit about, there's something else I forgot to talk about. And I also went and got the Hesicos out for tonight. So the 7 is often a defensive position. There's the Anna K and the Hesicos. And in the picture, you often see the person taking higher ground. And I talked about how I felt that is completely necessary from time to time. It's almost like we need to protect ourselves by retreating higher. And you could read something really kind of cool into that. I never actually thought of that, because higher ground is closer to universal consciousness, whatever you want to refer to that as. And so taking that higher ground, and isn't it interesting in this card how she's taken the higher ground is the runway, which is kind of funny. But this reminds me, and I've never been involved or known, like have direct experience with it, but do you know what the Red Hat Club is? I have one of my friend's aunts I know belongs to one, and I have heard a few different stories. But it is a club that acknowledges it's not the right, it's the freedom of older women to wear whatever it is they want to wear. So when you are a woman of a certain age, you don't have to dress a certain way. You can wear whatever you want. And I believe that is the premise of the Red Hat Club. The Red Hat Club is to celebrate that, to really, really celebrate that. So to me, this card looks like a woman of a certain age who would not normally be on a runway because she's not emaciated, strutting her stuff and feeling, this could be at a fundraiser or something like that, strutting her stuff and feeling beautiful and proud. And she's not so much in a defensive position as she has taken that higher ground to show the world just how proud and successful and comfortable she is in her achievements. Do you remember the card that we were looking at I hope I have it here tonight. Yes, I do. This one. So from the Everyday Enchantment. And so how is it different? I'm going to say it's not different. It's very, very, very similar. So I really encourage you I think this exercise is brilliant in that pulling out lots of different decks and really trying to find and weave the subtle different layers of energy in these cards it's just a great way to study tarot and do all of that. Okay, nice that you can listen while you're driving. Be careful as you're driving. And everybody, how's the weather where you are? We've been hit with a snowstorm. So I'm on the coast, which doesn't usually get a lot of snow, but we have been hit with snow, and the kids had a couple days off, and yeah, so we have a different kind of energy in the house the last few days. I still have one child here at home. Anyway, so let's move on to the 8s, which I don't think is a complicated card. There's a few different perceptions of the 8 in these decks I'm looking at. And sorry, I just have to go back and do one more thing. I posted this on the community tab, so I pulled the wrong card last week. I was sharing with you the 6 of Wands, which actually is this card in the Wild Unknown. but I showed you this card by mistake. And I think it's really interesting energetically how similar these two cards are. So coming out of the darkness to the light and the kind of transformation that is indicated in both of those cards. So my comment is on the community tab. And it's really funny because a couple other people said, oh, I've done the same thing with that deck. The Six of Swords and the Six of Wands look so similar. Okay, so let's go back to the energy of the 8. And I think there's kind of two main messages that I get with the 8. One is a tremendous amount of energy is coming together. So here's the wild unknown again. And so we have this strike of lightning coming into the 8 wands, right? It's just full of energy. Full of energy. I should probably show that the right way up because lightning doesn't come from the ground. It comes from the sky. There you go. All right. And then I know some people have a preference because here the wands are flying away. This is the lumina trimmed. Here is the texture. The wands are shooting down. So I think that's kind of an interesting question. Do you have a preference? Do you feel different if the wands are going in one direction or another? There's the Hesicos. They're flying away. For me, the piece that is really important is if the wands are showing direction and I have a large spread on the table, what are the wands moving toward? What are they moving away from? I find that's a really kind of important question. And here we looked at everyday enchantment a lot last week as well too. So I'm just going to kind of keep that in the mix. And we have the other kind of side of this card, which is the message, the messenger. And so we have a letter carrier delivering mail. And so there's a message. And you see that in quite a few decks. Here's Anna Kay. So I have a question for you. So if you're using a deck that shows it clearly as more energy-based, as opposed to a deck that clearly shows a message being delivered, how are you fluid with both of those interpretations, or do you use the one that's kind of pictured, or do you read intuitively? I mean, I pull all kinds of crazy stuff in, as you know, to my readings. This is my Wizard of Oz card from the Everyday Witch, right? I see Dorothy. I see the tornado. I see that transition from Kansas to Oz. I can't help it. And so that's something that really speaks to me in that deck. And then this one is very much like the one that we looked at here, where we have, this one is the Vision Quest Tarot. Same as the Wild Unknown, where we have this energy coming together and there is just this kind of surgence of fire. So I think it's important in this card that if you get this card in a reading, you want to make sure that there's a sense of balance and things are not getting too carried away. So look for other fire cards in the reading. I think that is kind of really, really important, because the card that comes after, of course, is kind of the result of the 8. Not in the case, of course, if it's the messenger card. Because a lot, oh, I didn't show you Shadowscapes. Here, this is so beautiful, as are all the cards in Shadowscapes. So here we have perhaps dandelion spores, and they're gently floating away. There's not this urgency. And so perhaps these dandelion spores represent a message being sent to the universe, to heaven, to however you refer to that. And the foxes are not, the foxes are very peaceful in this card as well too. So there is more of an integration of the communication between the universe and the figure in the card. I just love this tarot. It's just has so much to offer. So let's go on to the nines. So if the result of the 8 is the 9, which I find is often the case, and once in a while, of course, we do have cards that appear in sequence in a reading. And that can be kind of a bitter lesson, because when we have the cards that appear, I think this one is funny. This is the Lumina. So I want to know how in the world this figure here had time to weave all of these wands together. What was I saying? The energy is so two things come up. Sorry, deep pause there. This is almost the end of the suit. But it always feels to me like this is a breath. This is a break. It's a time to pause and reflect. It might be time to run to the emergency room as well too, or it might be time to actually, get yourself bandaged up. But it's also time to acknowledge the hard work that you have done, because often there's been a lot of energy expelled, a lot of energy used, and you probably didn't do this alone. There were probably other people involved. And when I look at a card like this, I think, wow, like how many people did he protect? Did he protect the whole village? I mean, look at the scratches on the arms. I don't know if those are intended to be scratches, or I think there's some scratches, some more wounds, some more paint as well too. I always want to bring in all of those questions because it's so much energy. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you some questions, and we're going to look at how does the energy, because remember last week I said, I don't look at these cards in isolation. It's really important to look at how the elements are interacting with each other. And so in a moment, we're going to look at how does fire fuel, or how does fire support each of the elements. So these are all kind of questions I'm throwing out there. And then, this beautiful 9 of Wands in the Wild Unknown is one of those cards of definitely moving through and moving forward. And there's quite a few decks that have this kind of stepping stone path, being revealed, and you see this in perspective. And I find these two cards side by side very hard to understand. So if there was this beautiful pathway with the moonlight guiding you, how in the world did you end up here in all of these brambles in the darkness? Because that 10 is just, it's incongruent to me, to the difference between the 9 and the 10 in the Wild Unknown. Let's look at a couple of other ones. Here's Anna Kay again. This is the indie version of the deck, by the way, which is a little smaller in shape, and it has these lovely colored borders. So there's your 9 and your 10 there. And I always kind of wondered about this one, like the figure in the 10 here is kind of hiding, right, in a tremendous amount of fear. But for me, the 10 has nothing to do with fear, right? Look at this one. That's textured. And here we go. There's the 9 and 10 in that one. The 10 has nothing to do with fear. Yes, there is that exhaustion component. There's like, what is that expression? Saturation of the energy, right? Saturation of the suit. So when we get to that 9 and 10, it's too much. It's too much. And so in the reading, you want to look around and check for where's the balance, or how are you going to work through the saturation of the energy, because the saturation of this suit is a lot. I tend to do a kind of a guided meditation when I sit down with clients. And I find that when these cards, the 9 and the 10 of Wands, are going to appear in a reading, usually my right shoulder is going kaboom, like it's just pulsing and it feels like it's going to explode and it's heavy and it hurts and it aches. And so during the meditation, I give some guidance how to kind of bring both shoulders into balance and also how to move that energy through. Audrey Nash, hi. Welcome. Yes, it's a really, really odd transition. Audrey says the Golden Dawn astrological significations have a lot to do with modern interpretations. 10 of Wands is called Lord of Oppression. And the question for me is this burden or all these responsibilities, is this your stuff? Or is it other people's stuff? I also find this oppression is often also the nth degree of the caretaker archetype, right? It's that person who is getting burnt out from looking after too many people and they're not looking after themselves. I find it's really, really common. And so the darkness that is represented here, call it oppression, call it avoidance. It's very, very, very real. And so for me as a healer working with clients, whether they're in person or not, it's really important to see where the balance is, if there is balance somewhere else in the reading, because I hope there is, because it is a lot of energy. So I was talking about breath. And so what I get, and let me know, if you have similar practices, because I love to share pranayama practices. So if this side of the shoulder is lighting up and it feels heavy and weighted, and physically, usually that person is aware of a sore right shoulder or an imbalance in their shoulders. And you can just look at people, how they kind of sit lopsided and they don't, or if they have like a tank top on or something, you can actually see the bulk that is carried on one side more than the other. So what I have them do is to breathe into the left shoulder and to focus on the left shoulder and to try to bring energy to the other side. And this is something that I work with in Reiki too, right? We want to make sure, we want to work towards balance. Yes, there's a lot of pain here. Yes, we have to release the energy here, but we want to invite balance and we want to help carry the load equally on both shoulders. And I just find this kind of thing works really well for people who have an abundance of these Wands cards at the end of the suit, because it's a lot. It really is a lot. So before I go on to the court cards, I want to ask you this question. And that is, I just want to look at the 9 and the 10 and Everyday Witch. Yeah. I love the court cards and the wands. They're so fun. They're so fiery. There's Everyday Witch, in case you don't remember. So my question is, how does fire support, and how does, in a supportive way, and how does fire exacerbate is another, I want to find the light side and the shadow side of fire in relationship to each of the elements. So that's my question. I should have had element cards here for the other suits. So let's start with earth, because earth and fire are kind of neutral, but I think these are important considerations if you have pentacles and fire kind of sitting near each other in a reading. So fire can warm the earth. Sometimes the earth is cold and frozen and it needs to stimulate growth, right? Like in the spring, we need the heat to begin to stimulate the seeds or to stimulate the plants that have been dormant over the winter. So it can be very warming and soothing. Just like a warm bowl of soup can be very nourishing, and it can feel really good to the physical body. And it is just like that welcome ray of sunshine when you live somewhere where it's cold and dark all of the time, right? It can feel very, very wholesome. And so when I think of pentacles, I think of the physical body, I think of nature. Um, and then if we think of business, so the whole idea of fire in business is the idea of, stimulating. It's new ideas. It's kind of like lighting a fire underneath your coworker's butt to get them going, that kind of energy. But also when we think of fire in regards to earth negatively, there can be, and especially with the physical body, what happens if we're eating too much rajasic, and I'll explain what that means in a second, food. So this comes from the sister science to yoga, which is Ayurveda. And Ayurveda speaks to different kinds of constitutions. And we also we can look at the gunas as well too, but I'm not going to bring all of that in. And basically it just means fiery food that stimulates us. So things like spice, garlic, any kind of food that kind of makes the digestive system go a little more quickly. All right. It's not calming. It's not junk food. It's the food that stimulates the digestion. So on a positive side of that, we could add a little bit of turmeric to our food, right? To aid with digestion. But excuse me, what happens if we eat Mexican or Thai for several nights in a row? That's not going to, sorry, I forgot to unplug the phone tonight. I'm going to message somebody else in the house to do that for me. Okay, so the fire can both, excuse me, this is so embarrassing. It probably won't ring again, but I'm going to deal with that. Yeah, okay. So if we add a little bit of gently healing spice, high-end, to the digestive system, then it's going to support it. But if we add too much of anything, it's going to wreak havoc, and we're going to have who knows what kind of results. Okay. Can you please find the house phone and pass it to me? Okay, so if we look at the other aspects of the pentacles, so let's look at business and let's look at physical elements of the earth. One of the things that happens, you can pass it to me, Kira. Oh, okay, never mind. So let's look at the earth. I live somewhere, and I mean, there's lots of places. Look at Australia right now. When fire wreaks havoc on the earth, we end up with things like forest fires. The positive side of that is, of course, the forest fires in the end nourish the forest, and they thin out the forest. So it's part of a natural cycle. But unfortunately, things like urban environments get in the way of the forest fires. As far as, so we can end up with deserts and drought, and it can dry up the water, right? So that would be the excessive aspect, as opposed to the warming and that welcoming heat we have in the spring. And then if we have too much fire at work, too much fire with business, things can get very out of hand, right? And so there's not a lot of due consideration. So that's kind of the fire and pentacles relationship. Air is a whole other problem. Well, we'll look at the forest fire issue. So if we feed, and we can apply this to everything I've said, if air fuels fire, and we're talking about nature, it just goes out of control. I know, fire is just, it's so amazing. Fire is used to, oh, I didn't include this one, to cook our food, right? We need fire to cook the food. We need the heat to cook the food. So that's really important. We also need the heat to mold the tools. So there's way more than I was thinking with the element of pentacles. Fire and pentacles are very intimately related. So as far, I was talking about health and wellness, and if fire fuels air in the body, what happens? That's really, I need to think about that. Maybe a thought will come back. It feels really, really unhealthy. So in the physical body, the vata, the air, refers to the joints. And it refers to, like if we have too much air in the joints, that's a symptom. It also has to do, it fuels the indigestion if we have like air, we're talking about gas and things like that. It's just, it's not a healthy combination. But I'm thinking if there is a positive aspect to air and fire as far as the body goes. I mean, in balance, they're going to support each other. If we look to the throat chakra, the fire perhaps is going to stimulate the permission to speak. You know, some people need kind of this energy to be stimulated because they're so shy. So I just really encourage you to look at these relationships on many, many, many levels. And then fire and water, right? So those are kind of the opposites, but there's also this beautiful relationship, right? We have the upward facing triangle, which is the representing fire. And then we have the downward facing triangle, which is water. And when those two come together, we get the hexagram of the heart space. And so we can also think of the right side of the body representing solar, the left side representing lunar. And when they come together, we have this ultimate balance. So in balance, fire and water are like the, you know, that's exactly where we want to be. And I feel that those two elements, when they get just a little bit in one direction, just all hell breaks loose. And that's when people come to you for a reading because they are out of balance. So I want you to keep all of that kind of in the back of your mind as you, I don't know, I hope these discussions kind of spur you to look at some of these cards in a different way because it's just beautiful. I'm going to repeat the quote I shared with you last week because I think it's something to kind of memorize and to really think about. Wands energy cannot benefit us until we give it a purpose. Or I'm going to expand on that until we understand its relationship with the other elements. Right? So that's pretty cool. I shared last week my kind of relationship with fire and doing solo fires when I was doing my shamanic training. And it's very personal for people, the relationship with fire. So often, I had a reading this week that, thank you very much, Jen. I had a reading this week that was there was a lot of earth and a lot of water. So and there was one fire card. What happens when we have earth and water? What do you get? Right? Mud. Which, well, is a problem for a lot of people, right? That's your kind of sloth energy. And it's very, very difficult to grow anything. It's difficult to move. It's difficult to digest, right? And so we need fire to stimulate all of that. Why am I talking about this? I wanted to share something in this reading with you. Hopefully that thought will come back. So it's really important to look at these mix of elements in a reading. And sometimes the absence of a particular element in a reading is what you need to notice more than the actual cards that are on the table, because that is going to be the healing energy that that person needs. Partially. I mean, there's lots that goes on in a reading, but that's something I always pay attention to. So I want to do two more things tonight. And one is I want to look at the element of fire through the majors, and I want to look at the fire court cards. So I'm going to just kind of give you my very quick rundown on fire through the major arcana. And what I did was I made a list of the major arcana, and I was surprised how much fire there is in the majors. If you had to assign elements to each of the majors, and I know some decks actually put a elemental symbol on the majors, but really think about it. And I believe that different readings, different times, you're going to pick up on a different energy. So, for example, the high priestess, I go water. Obviously, that's water. Um, but there might be something about that you feel the magic energy. When so third eye chakra is a balance of all of the elements. So that comes from yogic teachings. So when we focus on the third eye chakra, we're not looking at a particular element. We're looking at this beautiful integration of all of the elements. So there is a tiny little bit of fire there. But let's go back to the magician, because while the magician has all of the elements on his table, for me, it's always about the magic wand. It's about that potential. I love it when I get aces and the magician, because then I know that that potential is there for what it is they're wanting to create to happen. So for sure, there's an abundance of fire in the magician, and there's a balance of fire in the high priestess. The the empress is about creativity. And what is creativity if not energy, if not fire, right? I associate the empress with water also because of the second chakra and where we birth things from. And there's this really interesting balance between fire and water in that regard. So for sure, the empress has a component of fire within her energy. The emperor is, right, fire for sure. He has lots of often little upward facing triangles on his uniform. And then when we get to the lovers, that's exactly what I was talking about. So the lovers is this integration of the fire and the water. So far, there is not a major card that doesn't have a component of fire. And I didn't mention the Fool. Normally, I associate the Fool with air, but if the Fool needed something to start the journey. And what did he need to start the journey? Fire. So there is this magical component of this base core element running through, so far, the whole of the hero's journey. And then we come to the Chariot, which is, again, fire and water. In many, many cards, we have that yin and that yang harmonic balance between one side and the other. But there's this surgence of energy that needs to happen so that chariot energy is allowed to move forward. We come to strength, often associated with the sign of Leo, and we have this, again, beautiful balance between this inner strength and this outward manifestation of strength. And then we get to the Hermit, who is what? You think of something quiet and like contemplation. So in the Hermit, we have a lot of this kind of third eye chakra stuff going on. But what does he hold? In most pictures, there is a flame. There is fire in every single major card. The wheel represents the seasons, the cycles, the ups and downs of life. And sorry, I have no major cards out here for you. Oh, wow. So we have another card of balance that has at least a component of the sun in there. Justice is fire in action. So I want you to think about, I've talked a lot about justice as karma and a karma card. Sometimes it's actually labeled karma. And in yogic terms, karma represents the solar plexus. And one of the prescriptions for overstimulated or understimulated third chakra from a yoga psychology perspective is karma yoga. Karma yoga means selfless service. It means right action. Okay? Justice. Hanged man. Hanged person. So this one, if any card doesn't have a lot of fire, is probably this one. So that by choice, the hanged person is hanging upside down to gain a new perspective. There is energy, of course, required to actually get into that position and to do that. The hanged man is not always upside down, right? It can be just a card of that perception. So this is really the first card for me that doesn't have a significant amount of fire. And then we have death. So I didn't write this out. I just made a few quick notes here. So this is not a complete thought by any means for me. So all the way up to number 11, there's a significant amount of fire. So the first half of the major arcana appears to be very, very fueled by this element. And then I'm looking at death, which does not seem very fiery to me at all. Temperance is another one of those cards where we have the balance of the fire and the water. The devil, again, is associated with a lot of energy and often misplaced energy. So for sure, we have the element of fire there. The tower is fueled by fire, that volcano, that volcanic energy, moving up from the earth. The star, a star is fire. The sun is fire. And the world is all of the elements in balance. So really, for me, the only two cards that don't speak to the fuel of fire are right in the middle. So the Hanged Man and Death. So I'd be really interested to know, how you see that. And I know there are traditional elemental associations for all of the cards. And some people use that and other people don't, but I just found that really an interesting exercise. So I'd like to go on to the court cards, and I have spoken to the court cards on a few different occasions. I have a few different videos that I have done, and I just want to say that I love the court cards. I'm not a person who, when a court card appears in a reading, goes, oh, like, I don't know how to read that, or what am I going to do with that? I actually love the court cards. And I think part of your job, whether you are just reading for yourself or you're reading for others, is to find a deck that you relate to. A deck that you identify with the figures in the card. So the pages, who are traditionally associated with the element of earth, are the slowest moving of the courts of fire, right? So I think that association is important to kind of be with. There's the Daughter of Fire in the Vision Quest. Isn't that lovely? So usually there's not a lot of action in the pages, but of all the pages, this is the page that has the most action. So there's Everyday Enchantment. And it's the one in the textured tarot. I mean, there's a few amazing ones. Here we go, the page. So the page is the kids, And remember, the kids can be the kids at heart. I'm just going to say this now, and I might repeat it again. All 16 of the quartz represent an aspect of you. And at any given day, on any given day, at any given time, one or two or three of those aspects are going to show up in a reading because that energy needs to be reflected back to you, either to confirm that you've got it or to spur you on to embody that energy. Now, that can show up in lots of different ways. Yeah, it can show up as another person because we learn best by those others around us who are mirroring something back. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a person to me. It can just be an energy that you need to see within yourself or that needs to be shining back for yourself. So these pages of fire are the kids who never walk on the sidewalk. They're the ones that always climb up on the high ledge on the side, and they don't walk. They run or they skip or they cartwheel. They are full of energy and full of play, and they're the most lovely children. They're the scariest toddlers to have around because they're always falling and cutting themselves, and they often break their arms and get gashes in their head, but they have so much fun doing it, and they're just really, really lovely to have around, and they really get the energy of fire. The sense of adventure runs through the whole court of fire, and I feel deeply connected to this court. There's a lot of aspects to me that relate to the other courts, but this court, I'm a Leo, and also in the Chinese year, so Leo is my sun sign. But in the Chinese calendar, I'm a year of the tiger also. So I have, and in different ways, I have lots of fire within me. And then when we get to the knights, look at this guy. This is the Knight of Wands in Everyday Enchantment. Let's see what else we have here. It's this is, if you are a little timid, this is not the energy you want on your first date. So and remember, this is not the Knight of Wands. It's not necessarily a guy. It can be a very fiery and passionate and self-confident woman as well too. So the whole thing with gender is really complicated in the tarot. These are energies. These are not male or female, and this gets really blurred when you're working with clients that don't identify with either gender. And I want to share something with you because I've really been putting a lot of thought into this. Maybe this is something for a whole other video, but I want and wish for every single client to be as comfortable with their strength and with their confidence and with their creativity as they are with their softness, as they are with walking quietly through the forest and just sitting at the beach and looking at the moon. I wish this for every man, for every woman, for every they, to feel that balance. And I think that's why people come for a reading, is because they need to find that integration, right? It's just so very, very important. So this Knight of Wands is a little one-sided, okay? And this is a lovely person to be with for a short time. And if we're talking about another person, they probably won't be around for a long time because they're going to be moving on to the next thing. But it's fun. It's fun while it lasts. And you can think back to experiences that you have had yourself where it was fun while it lasted, but it was enough. And you got to this place where you realized, okay, I need to take a breath. And yeah, I need to slow down. If you are, I'm thinking about kids who take a gap year, or people that just decide to, take a year off and travel the world. And that is it's a really great experience. Or not necessarily that. That's not a good example. Um, let's travel Europe, 7 countries in 7 days, that kind of thing. That is exhausting. It's so bad for you. It's so much fire. It's so much wasted energy, and you don't appreciate anything along the way. And I think that while it's a lot of fun and a lot of adventure, in order to bring that into balance, there needs to be another person to kind of, slow you down at least 2 days in every country. Yeah. Okay. So these queens, love, love, love these queens of fire. I so understand them. I so relate to them. This is how are we doing over here? Not many people chatting tonight. It's a quiet group tonight, and we only have 11 people watching right now. That's okay. So those of you that watch this later, I really enjoy engaging with you after the fact too, because as things come up, I think it's important to share. Let's see. I want to show you a Queen of Wands because they are just so full of life, so full of energy. I don't know where I put. The decks I have out here are not really some of my favorite Queen of Wands. Here's the one from Everyday Enchantment. There's an aspect of the Queen of Wands so when we get to the King and the Queen, this excessive fire is a little more in balance. I don't want to say they've mastered the element, but they've come to a place where they know how to use this element to its best. And so they know how to, you would normally associate a hostess or cooking with the Queen of Earth, but there's also this gregarious hostess type energy with the Queen of fire. Like at a party, like if you think about a party, she is the kind of energy that people gravitate to. She has charisma and charm, and there's just this energy that radiates from her, and very, very similar with the King, but I'll speak to the subtle differences of energy of that in a moment. I just want to check into the wild unknown and see. Oh yeah, we have the snakes. Yeah, we have the snakes, which are kind of different. And so I want you to give yourself permission to read the deck you're using, because this Mother of Wands looks really protective to me. And if you were to stand next to her, she is going to lash out in protection of her babies. She's not the life of the party, right? There's a lot of energy there, a lot of heat and warmth that's needed to keep those eggs warm so they will hatch. And there's the King, right? He's got the lightning bolt running down the back of the scene here. So some decks have a little bit different energy. When we look to a more shamanic deck, it's about that perfect, well, I said that. This is just a different way to look at it. There's that integration of the element. And I think that's what the kings and the queens of every suit have, is that peace, the peace with the element. The element no longer is a challenge. The element is very, definitely it's dominant in their personality, in their way of life, but it doesn't overtake. And they know how to bring it into balance when it gets out of whack. Yeah, that is really important. Oh my goodness. So this is quite similar to the page we were looking at in, look how similar these two are. So Shadowscapes. Oh no, sorry, I've got the wrong one. Here we go. Textured page of fire. Shadowscapes page of fire. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So give yourself permission to read the deck. And I can give you an example that happened yesterday in a reading. So it wasn't textured. Oh, I can probably pull the card. I have the deck, the whole deck here. Sorry, this is kind of going off topic, but I think this is really important. Give yourself permission to read the deck. And this is what it means to be an intuitive reader. It means to allow symbols, to allow yourself to be guided. So sometimes when I'm doing a reading, I feel like everything is being channeled. And I stop at the end of the reading and I go, whoa, like, where did that come from? Or I'm in a reading and I say, I've never seen that before. I've never said that before. Like, I have no idea why I'm saying this or where this is coming from. And so you need to allow that to emerge. So this is the 10 of Pentacles in textured tarot. This gigantic mansion with this kind of scary cloud overhead. And I know we're not doing Pentacles today. There's a lot of 10 of Pentacles that really do a good job of showing the less than light side of the 10 of Pentacles. Because again, it is the saturation of the suit. But my point of sharing this with you was, I was looking at the smoke or the cloud, which is actually a tree, I believe, and there's tree roots on top of the house. But to me, it looked like smoke. And it was coming out of the chimney of the house. And do you know what I read or what I saw? It was like to keep the fire burning, to keep the hearth burning, to not let your light be dimmed. And it was this encouragement of, keeping yourself warm. And I was looking at this card going like, whoa, okay, I never would have said that or seen that. But for that person at that moment, right then and there, they needed to hear that. And it was connected to other things that I was saying. And this same card was sitting right next to the beautiful Page of Pentacles in this deck, which is that young girl sitting on the stairs. I do love this deck. I wish I could riffle shuffle it, but I love it. That's the only thing I don't like about textured, is the fact it can't be riffle shuffled. Of course, it's going to be at the bottom. But I want to show you in case you don't have this deck, because it's kind of pointless for me to share what I saw if you can't see it with your own two eyes. Of course, last card. Here's the page. It is Pentacles, right? Yes, Page of Pentacles. So she was sitting in the reading, in the spread, very close to this card. And I was looking at this, and because we were talking, it was a reading about shifting jobs, shifting occupations. And I'm thinking, okay. So we were talking about going back to school, taking up another line of study. And then I'm staring at this card, and all I can see is institution. So I'm thinking, okay, yes, go back to school. This is about an institution. This is about your studies. Okay, yes, give yourself permission to go back and to take that line of study. So that's not, the 10 of Pentacles is not about an institution, but that's what I saw in that moment at that time. And so it's really important for you to give yourself permission to read the deck in a way that speaks to you. You know, here's the Queen of Wands in the Everyday Witch. And I love decks that have dragons. They really, really make me feel powerful, and I love their energy. In this particular one, she's completely connected with the dragon. She's sitting on the dragon. The dragon is her throne. The dragon has given her permission to rest there, very much in a way, same way that this Mother of Fire is so integrated and connected with the fire here. So it entirely depends on what your experience is with the element, and what kind of stories you're comfortable weaving. And I want you to allow yourself to be a weaver of stories, because that's how you get the very, very best readings from these amazing cards. And then I just want to touch on the King, the subtle differences, the energy of the King. So yes, the King is also integrated, very integrated in the element. And so all of the King, I didn't talk about this. So pages are earth, and knights are air. All knights are connected to the element of air. So that's one of the reasons that this knight can really get out of control, because this knight of fire is fueled by air. So you got to watch out. And hopefully there's balance, right, with this card when it comes up. And then the queens are connected with water. So I think that's one of the reasons why this queen is so charismatic, is this is the queen that has that. Well, there's two of them, obviously. This is the queen that is perfectly balanced, because she has that water energy and fire energy. So she is, to me, the most balanced of all the queens. The King, however, as with all kings, are connected to fire. So when we get to the King of Fire, we have double fire, which can be a bit of a problem, much like his son, the Knight of Wands, in a different way. But we have a possibility of everything from someone who has a very heavy hand, shall we say, to a lot of anger. And so when we look to the shadow side of the King of Knights, the King of Wands, there can be some really dark karmic patterns. But hopefully this king has integrated, learned his lessons, and able to manage and to be in gratitude and have enough experience that this double, sounds like Tim Hortons for all you Canadians out there, Canadian joke, inside Canadian joke, double. The double fire doesn't get out of control, because that definitely can be a characteristic of this king. This is actually a really cool King of Fire, more of an androgynous kind of character here. Yeah, very really, really powerful. What do we have in this one? So this King of Fire looks fully integrated. This King of Fire is fully integrated. Can you think of a deck where the King of Fire is not integrated? There must be a few out there where the King of Fire is excessively hot. Oh, that's funny. Excessively hot King of Fire. I might want to think about the Lumina Tarot. I can't think of the Lumina Tarot for now, but I just encourage you to really keep that kind of in the back of your mind. I'm just looking at Shadowscapes here. Whoa. This could be trouble. There's a King of Fire there. So the King of Fire could actually be the magician out of control. The potential is there for that. So I have, there's a lot of things that I weave in and out of when I'm looking at these court cards. But for the most part, I do really see the King of Fire as, I'm just looking at a few here. I can't think of an example. So let me know if you know one. All right. So anything else for tonight? Let me know if you have other questions about the suit of wands, because it's a pretty dynamic suit. It's really cool. It's actually fun to work with wands and to really kind of explore them. And so maybe tomorrow, or you're not all watching this today, after you watch this video, go and get your favorite deck, pull out the entire suit of wands, and spend some time with it, because it's really really, really important. I want to just repeat kind of the important principles that I talked about last week, just for those of you that weren't here last week. One is there is no separation of categories. So every single one of the suits possesses some characteristic of the other suits. So within this fiery suit of wands, we do have, and the example I gave you was the queen. I said, you would associate that kind of hostess energy with the queen of earth, right? But for sure, there's a crossover between those two. And then I'm thinking about intuition and magic. And we can associate intuition and magic with the suit of air, also the suit of cups. And so there's all these crossovers. And so it's really important to remember that you can't really separate the suits. They have dominant features and characteristics, but you can't separate them. The second one is that no quality is good or bad. So no card in the tarot is good or bad. So let's see if I can, pick one here for you. I want you to remember that, because we tend to, I talked a little bit about Hesychos, and I know Hesychos is out of print, but maybe you can find one. I think the best way to get your hands on out of print decks is just to pay attention to the Facebook groups, because I think a lot of people over time, they retire decks, or they get tired of them, or they don't feel the same way they felt about a deck after a while. And so, right, a lot of the Four of Wands decks, the Four of Wands cards, feel really beautiful, right? They feel very supportive, and it seems like a really happy card. And I want you to remember that on the other side of the security and the stability and the balanced energy of the Four of Rods or the Four of Wands, there is the possibility for constriction, among other things. And just really keep that in mind, that no card is either good nor bad. It just depends on your reaction to the card or the surrounding cards. And then the third thing is that each suit represents a different approach to life. We need to reflect on the advantages and disadvantages. Well, that's not so different than the second thing I said. But if we look at the court cards specifically, there is definitely a different approach to life. And I'm sure when you were kids, when you were young, I mean, some of you might be young now, go back to your childhood and think about, maybe your parents didn't want you to play with that kid, or that kid, not for cultural reasons or anything like that, but because of the energy of that house, the kind of things those that family did. And families tend to have, birds of a feather flock together. And so, generally speaking, families tend to have a dominant element. And I challenge you to kind of look at some people that you know, families that you know, and see if you can identify what the dominant element is, either in your family or family friends. So yeah, so thank you all for being here and kind of going through this suit with me. It's been quite a journey, and it feels kind of exhausting. I kind of feel like, whew, glad that one's over, right? It's really, really fiery, these ones. So I think next week we should do something a little more quiet. I have had a few requests, and what I will do in the community tab is I'll put down a few of the requests that I've had, and you can vote. So I'll put that up later tonight, and then you can go there and vote on what topic you want next week. And then I'll cut it off on Tuesday, because usually I do my preparation on Wednesday night or Thursday, and then I'll figure that out. As far as the slow tarot video, I might put something up about that as well too. I'm just thinking out loud here, because the reaction to it's the devil card, I'm pretty sure, that had quite the response to what I had to say, was so strong. I might need some feedback as I prepare for that video. So you can look for that question as well too. So I'm going to leave you. I'm going to sign off, and I have just finished recording another collections video, so that'll be up hopefully later tonight. And I wish you all well. Stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Namaste.